We are live for the Friday edition of the Mike and Mario show, and I'm excited to be back. It's been too long, Mario, but here we are. How are you doing, my friend?
Yeah, I'm doing well, Mike, and you. I hope you had a nice holiday.
I did. Very, I'm rejuvenated, relaxed, and everything in between. Looking forward to getting back behind the mic and the camera and just sharing my 2 cents on what's happening out here. But
Someone's
nevertheless,
saying Mike looks better. Ha ha. Yeah.
I do tan quite well. Would you say? But no, I am
Did you get
peeling though. So
sunburned?
I do, but not as bad as like it don't hurt. It just I peel, but it's not bad. But all right, man. So hope everyone's doing well. Welcome back, Mario. It's good to hear your voice. Good to be back with you, my friend. Lots of things unfolding. Typical debt destruction here in the U.S. as well as the rest of the world. But what hasn't caught my attention is what's the possible developments about things happening out east. And it has a lot to do with the Brics nations and what could be coming soon. So we're going to touch on that, as well as I'll have you comb through some of the numbers recently from the reports given to us this week. And we'll talk about precious metals, of course, because that's extremely important in this current environment. But I guess let's jump in right into it, man. I'm curious to get your thoughts. I like to play through scenarios of what could possibly be and how things may shape off so we can stay ahead of the curve. But here's a headline I want to lead into. Brics nations say new currency may offer a shield from sanctions. And so we've been talking about the possibility of an alternative coming. And so the fact that the mainstream media now is admitting that the Brics are working on something, to me, I read through the lines, and it clearly tells me that they've already positioned and have some things in the works, but yet they've already been doing the currency swaps and doing the bilateral trades with their currencies. What will this new currency look like? And will it be solely digital in nature, or will there be something type of backing behind it for trust, or what are you thinking based upon what you gathered?
Yeah, there's also another article I saw from a Russian, I think it was TASS, and the finance minister of Russia was talking about that. And he said that it might not be a currency per se, but it might be a mechanism to settle trade surpluses and deficits, and that it could be digital, but backed by like gold and stable coins, like he says there. So whether they're going to come straight out with a currency, I don't know. But I think the most important thing, if you're going to go de-dollarize, you're going to de-fiat because the dollar is a fiat currency, and the only reason it stayed alive is because the U.S. forced other countries to use it with. I mean, yes, it did make the agreement with Saudi Arabia back in the 70s that increased demand for it through the petrodollar. But that's, we know the petrodollar is dying, that agreement. The Russians are doing deals with the Saudis. Now they're protecting them after the Afghan withdrawal from the U.S. did. The week after that, Russia signed an agreement with Saudi to security cooperation. And we are even seeing Saudi Arabia. They want to join Brics, and they want to join the Brics Bank, which is the new development bank. So it's all very significant. De-dollarizing, I think, is also this new system will have to have something that has real backing, because fiat currencies on their own, especially these Brics currencies that don't have a track record, they have to be backed by something. And just like the dollar used to be backed, it was as good as gold until, for foreigners at least, until 1971. For Americans, it was as good as gold until 1933. And I think it will have to be the same for the Brics. And whether eventually they'll have a currency probably doesn't really matter, as long as their currencies have a good backing and they can transfer it. It's not a problem.
Yeah, I would agree. And one of the things that really catches my attention is about this, the fact that not only has the world become, the word de-dollarization has become very popular now in the mainstream news. We have everybody and their mother talking about it. So clearly, if this is a non-planned event, then clearly the West has to have some type of thoughts towards this, to where they are working on something, or they have something in line with this. And so there's a lot of talks about events that could be coming to disrupt that or whatever. But clearly, well before now, this was already in the works. And so this doesn't look like it's completely out of the realm of the powers that be to have something planned for the future. Now, I think the media does a good job of making it painting at the picture as an East versus West situation. But whatever this currency is in nature, it's going to be something that will eventually be interoperable with whatever else is happening out there, so that the nations that are not a part of the BRICS can still do trade with those nations in a more trustworthy fashion. So somehow, some way, it's going to connect to the Euro system and whatever. However, the Latin American Merco system is also going to be a part of that. So it's going to be interconnectable at the end of the day in some capacity. So it's I think it's something to pay attention to. But at the end of the day, unless it's gold back and gold in nature, then it's not really worth much at all. And then here's another headline here that I wanted to mention as well that plays into why more nations might be considering alternatives. So this is just something I came across a moment ago. It says backlash against the weaponized dollar is growing across the world. And so not only is the dollar shortage that is out there from nations not having enough currencies to make do on their current obligations, this type of activity with new currency talk speeds up things of this nature because of stuff like this. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, aside from the the weaponization of the dollar, there's also the economic factor, because the dollar and the U.S. Being the reserve currency and being a fiat currency, or even having been backed by gold, what that does is that pushes other countries to try to earn as many dollars as possible, and that creates a trade deficit for the U.S. And it also gives the U.S. the privilege of printing money with no consequence, like they have been doing. And now these countries are realizing that the dollar is like going down in terms of value, and they need something more stable like gold. And gold is neutral; it's not political. You can't gold can't sanction a country. Gold doesn't get debased. Yes, the growth of the gold supply is very small compared to the stock to flow ratio is like 84 years. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we all know that it's been money for thousands of years, and it's yeah, and that's another reason they're de-dollarizing, not just because of the sanctions regime. And you said earlier that what will the West do to combat this de-dollarization? Well, some people might argue that it's all by design, and that they might be just like negotiating, and all the stuff we hear about tensions and the wars and like Taiwan and everything is just trying to get to a point where they get to the table and negotiate the new system. Or maybe the West under the U.S. leadership is going to go against, and that's what they're trying to do, I think, go against Russia, because Russia has dared to create this new or be part of this new currency and not use the dollar anymore. So who knows? But it's going to be harder to go against the BRICS and a lot of other countries. And we're hearing that European countries are asking to join the BRICS. So it's not going to be as easy to get rid of that BRICS and their a new currency system as it was to get rid of Saddam Hussein or Muammar Gaddafi and people like that.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot harder to do things like that because they're unified now. Like, not only is Russia and China, but it's good to say if the U.S. would try to, put sanctions on or to militarily wise combat any of those smaller nations, China and Russia would definitely come to their rescue, because this BRICS union is more than just the monetary side. It's good to say they're somehow, some way going to mix the political side as well as the military forces and might together, forming some type of big counter to, the NATO sphere that was created to combat Russia at this current moment. Like, so I was thinking about, there's a lot of talk about Ukraine still trying to join NATO. And has Russia ever requested to join NATO?
Yeah, I remember President Putin met with with Bill Clinton, President Clinton, and he said that Russia wanted to join NATO, but he never never answered him back. So they have.
Really? Okay. So I not knowing that, I'm
Oh,
thinking like,
I thought you knew that. No, but yeah,
no, because that's
it's
what I'm saying. Like, because NATO is, it seems like it's been set up to be an enemy to Russia directly. So it's like, what happens if they're
well,
enemy of
I mean,
Israel?
NATO. If we go back to World War II, World War II ended. The Soviets and the Allies were
Mhm,
fighting the Nazis, but after the war ended, uh, they had to find a new enemy. So
mhm.
communism in the Soviet Union was the new enemy, and
Yeah.
the Americans and the British, the Allies, they even took like old Nazi spies because they didn't like the Soviets.
Mhm,
So you had Operation Paperclip, where the CIA, who had just been created, brought in a lot of German uh, ex Nazis, and then Churchill made that I think a speech in University of Missouri or something in
mhm,
1947 or 8, and he said that there was an iron curtain falling on Europe, so they
mhm,
divide, this is communism, this is bad, and the West is good. And NATO hadn't been formed yet, but then in the early 50s, NATO was created to combat, the Soviets, because
mhm,
they were
mhm.
now the bad guys.
Right.
And then the Soviets created the Warsaw Pact, which
Mhm,
was what was a counter to NATO. And when the Soviet Union collapsed and the Berlin Wall fell in
mhm,
'89, early '90s, President Bush Sr. was president at he was president at the time, and he negotiated with James Baker, the Secretary of State, with the Russian or Soviet Foreign Minister Edward Shevardnadze.
mhm,
They negotiated that NATO would, the Soviets or the Russians would take all their troops out of Eastern Europe, and they did that.
mhm.
They did what they, and the Americans said, we won't move one troop into East Germany or the rest of Eastern Europe. So basically, they said we won't expand NATO.
Mhm,
Unfortunately, I guess the Russians or Soviets weren't in a strong position, and they didn't get it on paper. So that's what's happened. NATO has expanded, and
Yeah.
they wanted to expand into Ukraine, and they pushed. People will say I'm a Russian agent, but that's the history, and that's
Yeah.
why we have that conflict in the Ukraine for the last year and a few months, and it's akin to let's say, instead of the Soviet Union having collapsed in 1989, the West
Mhm,
of it collapsed, right? And
mhm,
then Russia and the Soviet Union would have like won the Cold War, and then let's say the US left Europe and then the Russians said, we won't move any troops uh, west of
Boy.
Germany. And
Mhm,
then you end up with the Soviets putting bases in Germany, France, Portugal, and then going over to Canada, Mexico,
mhm.
South America. You know, I don't think the Americans would have been very happy. So that's like
Right.
the flip side of what's happened, as I
Right.
see.
Right, right. Now that was a great breakdown of history, man. Like, I wasn't too well versed with the earlier years of the NATO origin. So, but my whole point about that was, given the fact that everything is set up to be a enemy of Russia, and so it's like it's always Russia, Russia, Russia. And even here on the home front now, to talk about the power grid, they got news reporters coming out talking about U.S. intelligence now talking about the possibility of a Russian cyber. I'm like, oh, we talked about this last year about a Russian cyber attack. So so it seems like now is the time, and it's still playing into this whole debt deal, which it's still not
Yeah.
fully done yet. So I hear people talk about next week or two could be a time frame for some type of event. Alex Jones out here ranting about, middle of June, the power of the blackout. I mean, I'm like, come on
Well,
now, like,
apparently you said that the Russians might, the intelligence said the Russians might be involved in that. But I also read that patriot groups within the U.S. could be
yeah,
involved in that. But I guess right now with the debt deal, it's been passed through the House and the Senate. So now they just need Brendan to sign it. Is that what it
mhm.
is?
To,
uh,
so to my
can he
so
still
so
sign something?
I know the
Because
House for sure. So the House was, I think,
no,
yesterday.
it
So is the Senate?
No, it passed in the Senate yesterday. It's
Okay.
already passed in the House.
Okay.
So I think it's a done deal. So it's the Fiscal Responsibility Act, which I would say is more the Fiscal Irresponsibility Act, much like the Inflation Reduction Act was the Inflation
Right. Nothing
Increasing
responsible.
Act.
Nothing responsible about an open-ended, money creation mechanism for the next 2 years. Like, so the question is, factor in, what's on the books, and then there's always some unforeseen event that comes about that where more currency is needed. So who knows
Mm.
exactly what the dollar amount might be a year or two from now, because the madness is still underway. Like, everything is still on play,
Yeah,
and so we'll find out, how this unwinds.
I
But
think sometimes focusing on the dollar, where will it be? But we need to focus it against hard assets and gold and silver. And I know gold and silver have been frustrating, but ultimately that's how it's going to be measured, because all the other currencies are going to go down too versus real things. And and this central banking model that we've had it in Europe for hundreds of years and in the US for 100 years. They always find an excuse, a war or a pandemic, and
yeah,
to justify the indebting the nation and enriching the bankers and the politicians. And I think that's it's gonna keep going. It's the only thing I'm pretty certain of. Everything else is very difficult to guess or
right.
speculate upon. And all that does is it makes the currencies worth less, and that's the only thing I'm certain of.
Yeah. Now, speaking on some other events, there's, let me just touch on this real quick. This at the BRICS summit meeting in August, and how, as of right here, it says that South Africa considers BRICS venue switch amidst Putin arrests warrant dilemma. So we'll see how this plays out. But obviously, powers that be will not like to see this transpire, so that their plans are disrupted. But we'll see. But will they be actually moving the summit to somewhere else? We'll see. We
Yeah,
got another 2 months. So
one thing I would say about the BRICS and the not just the countries within the BRICS, but like a lot of African countries, a lot of South American countries, a lot of Asian countries, they've been through colonization by the West, and we in the West don't realize that uh, we don't have too much moral authority left with these countries.
mhm,
So yeah, I I think. A lot of people here in the West, they underestimate the BRICS and what these people are doing, and how determined they are to create their own system outside the West.
mhm.
And what can we do about that? I think what we can do is maybe join them and be like friends with them, and not always be belligerent and trying to force upon them our will,
Right.
just like the neocons do. And with that, I mean, I think as we said earlier, there's some European countries that are exploring the possibility of joining the BRICS. They're
Mhm.
anonymous right now, but it would be interesting. I've heard rumors that the UK wanted to join BRICS, so who knows? Which
Mhm.
to me wouldn't make that much sense, because we're so much against Russia. I couldn't see us, not me personally, but our government here, or the government here, because I don't consider it my government.
Yeah. Now, another question will be: how would those anonymous countries that are putting out fillers for possibly joining the BRICS in the future, how would that work with them being a part of the Euro EU system? Like, they're part of the EU system, meaning they have to comply with all the rules, regulations, and the currency. But then again, they want to opt out, leave the Euro system, and to join the BRICS. Like, they can't. Could they do
No,
both at the same time? Or
well, yeah, I don't think there's a problem, because Brazil or China can join the BRICS and still use their currencies to trade, backed by gold. So the
Mhm.
euro would be the same. Eurozone countries have a lot of gold. Supposedly, their reserves are quite big, so they would be okay to join. Uh, yeah, they would probably have to negotiate a lot of things, because the EU is a single market, but it's very closed to free trade. They're not too much into free trade, the Europeans, but or it could be countries that are not part of the EU in Europe, like Norway or let's say Switzerland, or yeah, there's still a few countries, or even like the UK, for example. So it will be interesting to wait and see.
Right. So it for any additional country that now joins, especially if they're part of the G7, G20 nations, that they're already a part of the Western hegemony, like moving into a new entity.
Well, that would be the death knell, I think, of G7.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I'm like, even transitioning into that formation of a new union centered around moving away from the dollar and creating alternatives for the world to use. I guess one of the bonuses of joining that union is the fact that all those nations that are putting in for it now, they all offer the world something in the form of real
it's like
minerals, gold, silver.
It's like playing for the Chicago Bears and then you decide to go play for another team. You can't play for both.
Right.
You can't stay in, or if there's a different league to the NFL, if you start another league, the team can only play in one league. So yeah, I think it would be very significant if a significant country in Europe were to join the BRICS.
Now, based upon, I'm not too well versed in what contributions a lot of those European nations make to humanity. Like, I know Germany has always been good for manufacturing and things like that, technology, but not France got the wine and I'm sure other things, but so what exactly? So outside of those resources and minerals and goods there, like, what are you really bringing to the table? Because I'm assuming it's all about trade.
Tourism as well. Tourism. I guess nowadays it is important, tourism as well. I think it makes about 11% of the EU economy. And the reason I know that is I remember when COVID started, I wanted to know what the impact would be on the economy. So no, but Europe has, like I said, Germany has manufacturing. So does France have some manufacturing, Italy, and know-how as well. But even I think they're Europe needs to become more market oriented, unfortunately. But I think the point of it is that it would signal a move away from the Anglo-American empire, the dollar bloc.
Yeah, I do agree. Okay, let's keep it moving. Let's move to some more topics. Here is a headline that caught my attention, and you responded with the gold chart of the yuan, of the yen, and the and gold price. But Japan's government will vow to end deflation with bold, monetary, flexible fiscal policy. What exactly could they do that's even more bold than MMT for the last 30 years that would constitute as being bold?
As I said to you, I answered back when you sent me that they're digging an even deeper hole for themselves. I remember in the early mid-90s when I was working in the markets and Japan was already starting to interfere. And a lot of people said Japan should let everything liquidate, so they can start again. But they've been interfering for 30 years and they don't let things like flush out, like we've been doing the same thing. The Western central banks, now we bail out the banks. I know a few banks failed, but they bailed out the depositors and they keep pumping the QE. And I think the way the markets react, like the stock markets, shows that the first sign of trouble, the Fed and other central banks, they will intervene like the Fed did in March. So the Japanese, all they're going to do is they talk about deflation, but what they're doing is destroying the yen, because I sent you that chart of gold and yen, and it's at an all-time high, which means the yen is at an all-time low versus the yen, versus gold. So I'm afraid we're probably going to be doing the same thing in the West when we get a first hint of trouble, like we did not just in March, but also in September here in the UK, and October when the Bank of England did a bit of not QE to save the gilts and the pensions. So yeah, I mean, how can you say how can you say there's deflation when the currency, because if you turn that around, it's actually the yen dropping versus gold.
Yeah.
So it's just going to make the Japanese public worse off, and the elites in Japan, the bankers and the corporations, they're going to do okay.
Right. They always seem to end up on top of these situations that they're the cause of. Okay, let's keep it moving. Let me get some more articles here. And also I see some questions out there already, but we'll jump on that in a second. And so here's another little headline here, where this flies under the radar from the Western mainstream media, but U.S. military smuggles new batches of crude oil from Syria's Hasaka to Iraq.
Yeah.
Hasaka to Iraq. So it's like, I mean, we're not supposed to be in Syria, to my knowledge. Like, why are we even like? Come on now! But once again, we're spread out everywhere around the world.
The Russians were in Syria. The Russians were in Syria, but they were invited by the Syrian government.
Right.
The Americans aren't. And I mean, this is news. This has been known that America's getting a lot of oil from Syria. And where is the arrest warrant for Joe Biden or even Donald Trump? Because this has been happening since Obama was president. But, that's an illegal invasion of a country. But like you said, there's they're connected, these people, and they run the system. So
the agencies and the governments and all the private corporations, they're all working in cahoots with each other. So they protect themselves, and American people are left on the outside looking in.
I even saw that there's talk now that Jamie Dimon is going to run for president. So
I saw him mention that. And the sad thing is, like, he would definitely get the support of all his people he've helped throughout the last several years become uber wealthy. And somehow, some way, I'm sure they'll find the ballots at the last minute to confirm them.
Well, if they found it for Brandon, they definitely could find it for Jamie.
Correct. They're probably working on Jamie Dimon's ballots right now. They got somebody on the team. Some of the immigrants coming in from across the border, they've been put on the Jamie Dimon team to start filling out the ballots for 2024.
JB says that the CIA has been in Syria for decades. Well, I think they've been everywhere pretty much.
They've been everywhere. There's nowhere they have not been. Like they're the hitmen for our country.
Except the moon, Mike.
Huh?
Except the moon. They haven't been to the moon.
Right. Or on the other side of the wall.
Yeah, I think what's his name? John Kerry went down there, didn't he? After the
right. It was a rush for everyone to go down there.
What was he doing there? I mean, it's weird, isn't it? The night of the election.
Emergency. It was an emergency. It was some type of emergency because a lot of other people went down there. So it's like once you're in the club, then you're allowed to go down there to see what's there or not. So, all right, let's get to some questions, man. So feel free to throw out some questions, thoughts, ideas, suggestions, whatever topics on your mind. There's more than we can ever cover in one episode, but we'll do the best we can. So feel free. Let me get my tabs together. I don't know if my tabs go.
Rolf Steiner is saying that they took out JFK, probably. And but RFK Jr. now he's kind of backtracked. I'm not too sure about
on what is he?
Syria, but they put a clip where he said that the U.S. is doing the right thing in Syria, but I don't think he's for the wars, though. I think that it was maybe taken out of context. I don't know, but anyway,
right. Here's says Mike and Mario, can we open a nonprofit community exchange for sellers and buyers? Let's start breaking the sellers and buyers manipulation and buy silver 45 you sell back at 27. Not good.
Well, I mean the problem about nonprofit is a lot of people think the dealers are how can I say, ripping them off, but it's just like a car dealership. They're not going to sell you a car for what they buy it for.
Pay for, right?
Pay for, because they got to run a business. They got to make a profit. But I think the reason why we've got premiums like at $40, the silver Eagles 47, and then the spot price at 24 or 5, is that there's manipulation of the market, and the U.S. Mint hasn't minted enough silver eagles. But I'm sure. I think what you need to do is, maybe do it privately with people that are interested in buying, and then you can sell it to them maybe at 40, and they make 7 because they don't have to pay 47, and you do okay if you paid like 30 or 35. I mean, I bought some coins a few weeks ago from a friend who wanted to sell a bit, and I paid him just over spot 1% in gold. So but running like a community like that, it's
complicated.
It's complicated because we're not in the same jurisdiction, and in the U.S. you have sales taxes in different states. It's very complicated, and they might come after you as well.
Yeah, you'll be a target. Here's another question here from JB. Appreciate you, man. It says, will the Brics create a treasury and or bond market, or do they need to?
I don't think so, because I mean, each country has its own treasury and bond market, and the reason the U.S. bond market has become so big is because they have so much debt and they have to sell that stuff. But I've heard people saying, "Oh yeah, the dollar will stay as the major reserve currency because we have a liquid treasury market, bond market." But we're seeing now that market is becoming highly illiquid, and there's a lot of volatility. No, and I don't think the BRICS are gonna join together as like a European Union. All they're doing is like facilitating trade, and they're gonna use gold as a reserve asset to facilitate that, just like countries did back in the 19th century. They didn't have each country had its own treasury, and gold and silver were money, and that's how it worked. I think that's what the BRICS are looking to do.
Yeah, I do agree with that one. Here's another one here. No. So as far as I believe as well, like, so head into this new structure based upon however they work out the details for that new currency. It's good to say they're trying to get away from debt-based instruments. So to be able to issue the bonds or debt or whatever, I think they would probably offer some type of real-world resources, and that's where I think bringing nations that offer something to the world would be important. I don't think
it will be, if it was the BRICS system was going to be based on debt, then they would need a bond market and stuff. But I think it's going to be based more on trade of real goods and services, and you don't need debt for that. You just need
right. It'll be settled with both parties will be settled with actual real resources of some kind. Whatever the difference might be, then you have a credit and whatever. However that might work out. So here's persistence over resistance says, isn't the bill passing to raise a debt actually ceiling actually what we want in the long term? It kills the dollar, it kills the Fed, it defunds the Fed government. That's a lot of killing out there. I don't think it does all that killing though. What do you think?
I'll let you answer first, and then I'll.
So it's kid. So having spoke with persistence over resistance before, a lot of his belief system is that the Federal Reserve is on its way out, and saying that everything that's happening right now, the Fed will no longer be in existence beyond a certain point because there'll be alternatives. And I think also XRP, crypto, stuff like that is a part of giving the world options. So he said, in a nutshell. So raising the debt ceiling definitely would pump them more. It will pump the system with more monopoly money, sure, which over time would continue to base the currency because they're going to try to inflate their way out of this. Yes. Now, I don't think like we're going to be in a position where the Federal Reserve will not get the blame for this. They're going to find an outside source. Therefore, the Fed will be used still. That's why I think the Fed now and the Fed wire and the Fed coin, which will be in the near future, is a part of their plans. They're still planning on using all that Fed stuff as a way to reboot and reestablish the monetary system. Whether or not the people want it or not, we'll see. But the average Joe who know nothing about what's going on, they're going to sign up in real time, give their digital ID number, score, and everything between to get those digital bucks. The average person who hold gold and silver, we're going to try to hold off as long as we can. But then again, I think as long as the same people who are controlling this narrative now are still in control, I don't expect much to change. Is my point. But the debt ceiling, It's just this continuation of what's going on now. More monopoly money and
Yeah.
Weimar style inflation, whatever. Go ahead.
Yeah, and the debts, there is no debt ceiling for the next 18 months. So the sky's the limit, and
Right.
persistence and over resistance is right, because even the Congressional Budget Office, they forecast that the debt held by the public, which is around 24.5 trillion, it doesn't include the treasuries that the Fed and other like government agencies hold, is going to be like at 46 trillion by 2033. And it's probably going to be even more. It's probably going to be like 50 trillion. And yeah, he's right. It's unsustainable. And the amount of borrowing that the Fed, the Treasury have to do is huge. And just at the same time that all these countries are de-dollarizing means that they're not going to be buying as much U.S. debt. So I expect interest rates to keep going up. And you've seen what rising rates have done in the last 18 months, the trouble that they caused. So I still see trouble ahead. And I think he's right.
Now, here's so Fed coin is dead on arrival. And that's where I would tend to disagree, just because I think it's already digital in nature anyway, majority of the currency that we have. And so I think somehow, some way, the transition into another digital form that's on the ledger or server of the Fed and whoever is going to be running the servers, it can be a seamless process to where everybody and their mother who has a cell phone will actually have some type of way of transacting in some form or fashion, no matter who's on the back end of that, to where I don't think it's dead on arrival, because we could low-key be using a version of the Fed coin now and not even know it when it comes to logging into our bank accounts, because it's all digital. So to say it's dead on arrival, your average person, 99% of the people out there don't know what currency is anyway, or care anything about it. As long as it spins is what they're concerned with. So they'll use anything that comes their way just because it spins. Now, whatever. So we'll see. But here's another thought. Chris, appreciate you, man. It says, if the U.S. government outlaws gold ownership to do you think states like Texas and Wyoming should secede from the union? Firstly, that is a power grab, and secondly, it flies in the face of laws they're passed making gold and silver legal tender. Secession would be great, but I don't think the politicians within those states would ever be on the same team to pull that off. And then would the federal government sit around and allow that to happen without declaring some national emergency and sending, Coast Guard the troops or something like that? I don't know. It wouldn't be a smooth process in a timely manner. So I don't see none of that working out.
Well, they didn't secede from the Union in 1933 when Roosevelt outlawed gold ownership. So I wouldn't see why they would do it now. That's
and so
unless maybe in 1933 the states didn't care, but if enough states today rise up, you never know. You could have some kind of dispute between the states and the federal government.
It'd be good. I think it'd be good that if the people were to wake up, come together, and throw some wrenches in the plans of those trying to control this. Sure, I think it'd be a great way to disrupt some stuff. Sure, but ultimately speaking, I don't think Texas, even with their gold-backed coin that they're trying to come out with now, I don't really put much into that as of now, just because it's anything that's backed, I'm not 100% fan of it, because there's somebody on the other end of that that's responsible for those metals, and who can you trust in this current environment when it comes to your weight? So the risk is on you still, but we'll see.
Well, I think eventually people will have to come back, or else things don't work without trust.
Very true. Supernatural says Faircoin is a backdoor CBDC because it's 89% of transaction will pass through the network. They can put ESG constraints on it to allow or restrict transactions. Right. So, yeah, we know that's a part of their.
Well, I think I don't think ESG is going to survive. I think there's a lot of, thankfully in the US, there's a lot of people against ESG. Here in Europe, they've been brainwashed into it. But if the US drops ESG, the whole world will probably drop it.
Says we're okay as long as the Fed doesn't run out of zeros.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Throw a wrench at the monkey. Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. What else we got here? Is yelling at monkey. It says if the Fed coin or introduced, isn't that the federal government introducing a completely new currency, which is unconstitutional, right? But they've been able to get away with a lot of things that's unconstitutional at this current moment. So
Who
throwing
cares
out a new
about
branded currency when the world is
yeah.
in distress,
Who
I'd
cares
imagine a lot of
about
politicians will be mad at that. Was
you
that
know, the U.S. is not supposed to fight wars if it doesn't declare war, and I think the last time it declared war was in 1941. And look at all the wars it's been in.
right?
So the Constitution for these people doesn't really matter. It's just
Right.
it's not
And,
worth the
and
paper
I'm
it's
thinking
printed.
like in the case of some type of emergency, i.e., a black swan event or planned event, the result of that will easily be Congress people coming together in an emergency situation and passing anything that's thrown their way as a suggestion to help out the people.
Oh
So
yeah.
to me, it seems quite obvious to me, but not that to everybody else. If everyone put a monster box on their credit card, the world would be a better place. LBP. Oh man. All right, we're about our 40-minute mark, man. Mario, it's always good to connect with you, man. Any last thoughts? What are we paying attention to? We got the FOMC meeting coming up on next week or 2 weeks from now?
I
And
think
another
it's
quarter planner, what we're gonna look for.
FOMC is the 13th and 14th.
13th?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, things are getting there's so many things going on. I think sometimes the best thing to do is just to clear your head and do what you need to do and not be too distracted, even though we have to keep an eye on things.
Right.
And like you say, just keep your weight up. You know, that's
right. It's like,
what you need to try to do.
How do you stay attentive to events happening around you and to you without taking concern about it, and also trying to enjoy life, live life, stuff? So it's that balance, that happy medium balance of don't get overworked up and stressed out of stuff you can't control. Focus on things you can't control and pray about the rest. All right, well, hey, back at it again next week, same time, same place. Appreciate everybody for hanging out with us. Manigo64, definitely go check them out if you haven't. And other than that, as always, man, have a great weekend. Stay blessed up. Get outside, get some sunlight. And just enjoy the weather, man, while we still got it, because it's going to get cold in a couple months. And also, do anything extra to prepare
it's
for
still cold. It's still cold in England, though.
You got some cold weather over there still?
Well, it hasn't gone warm. So
it was 91. It was 91 here yesterday.
We're still like in the 50s and the low 60s. It hardly gets above.
You're used to it, though. You're used to it. So
yeah, no, but it's just running long this year. Anyway, it's nice today, though. I'm gonna go play 9 holes now.
All right, man. I'm about to go. I'm going to the gun range. Get me a couple of them. Give me a couple of rounds off myself. All right. Be blessed. Be safe. See you guys later.